Sometimes, when Isabella is asleep on the couch, our daughter nestled against her, a quiet, peaceful scene right out of a dream, I just watch them. And I feel this gratitude so deep it almost hurts. It's a feeling I never thought I'd experience, especially after everything I went through. There were times, not so long ago, when I thought my life would always be a whirlwind of anxiety, a constant state of bracing for the next disaster. But looking at them, I realize how far I've come. How completely different my life is from the one I was on track for, the one I thought I wanted. It all started one morning, years ago, in Charlotte, North Carolina. I woke up to find Scarlett standing at the foot of our bed. Her face held an expression I'd never seen before, a strange mix of pity and something that looked suspiciously like pure, unadulterated freedom. Before I could even manage a groggy "what's wrong?" she spoke. Those words, they echoed in my head for months. I met my soulmate. The way she said it wasn't apologetic, not even sad. It was excited. Like she'd just won the lottery, and I was supposed to cheer her on. Her name was Scarlett. We'd been together 3 years, lived together for 1. I genuinely believed we were building toward marriage, kids, the whole picture. She worked at a daycare in Midtown, and I was in tech sales. We had our routines, our silly inside jokes, and our cat, Biscuit, who she'd insisted on naming. Then, one ordinary Wednesday morning, everything I thought was solid just evaporated. She told me his name was Julian. He worked security at the plaza near her job. They'd been talking for 2 months, and she felt a connection with him, she said, that she'd never felt with anyone, not even me. I asked if she'd been cheating, and she looked at me, genuinely offended, as if I were the unreasonable one. It's not cheating, she'd said, with absolute conviction, when it's destiny. I remember just sitting there, on the edge of the bed, trying to wrap my head around how someone I'd shared so much life with could twist betrayal into some kind of spiritual awakening. She packed a bag that very day, said she'd come back for the rest later. As she walked out, she turned back, and the words she spoke next, I'll never forget them. If you truly loved me, you'd be happy for me and my soulmate. The door closed, and I just sat there, staring at the empty space where she'd been. It felt like someone had reached into my chest and scooped out everything that mattered. I didn't cry right away. I think I was too numb, too shocked. But later that night, when it finally hit, it hit hard. I called my brother, Daniel. He came over with a 6-pack and a pizza. He didn't say much, just sat with me while I tried to make sense of how someone could leave like that, with so much certainty, so little regret. He mumbled that Scarlett had always been a little dramatic, a little self-centered, but I'd been too close to see it clearly. Maybe he was right. Looking back, I could see moments where everything had to be about her feelings, her needs, her version of how things should be. I'd just written it off as passion. The next few weeks were a blur of numb routines. Go to work, come home, microwave dinners. I avoided our favorite restaurants, our hiking trails, anything that reminded me of her. Friends tried to set me up, telling me the best way to get over someone was to meet someone new. But I wasn't ready. I was still caught on that phrase, if you truly loved me. Like my love had been a test, and I'd failed by not celebrating her abandonment. I thought letting her go without a fight made me noble, mature, evolved. But really, it just made me feel empty. Scarlett texted me a few times in those first months, mostly logistical stuff. Asking about mail, about Biscuit, about a lamp she'd left behind. Every time her name lit up my phone, my stomach dropped. I kept my responses short, polite. I never asked about Julian, never asked if she was happy, because part of me didn't want to know, and another part was terrified she'd say yes. One text really stuck with me. She sent it around 2 in the morning on a Saturday, asking if I remembered the night we'd adopted Biscuit. I didn't respond. I knew she was testing something, seeing if I'd engage, if there was still an opening. Around month 4, I started to feel like myself again. Or at least, a version of myself that could function without that constant ache. I joined a gym, started running, lost some weight, grew a beard. All the cliché post-breakup reinvention things that actually, surprisingly, worked. Daniel dragged me to a concert one Friday night, some indie band I'd never heard of. Halfway through, I realized I hadn't thought about Scarlett once in 3 hours. That felt like real progress. One Saturday, I was at a coffee shop near my apartment, the kind with exposed brick and overpriced lattes. This woman in line ahead of me turned around, smiled, and said, "You look like you're deciding between caffeine and a nap." Her name was Isabella. She was a graphic designer, and she had this calm, grounded energy that felt like the exact opposite of everything Scarlett had been. We talked for 20 minutes, exchanged numbers, and I left feeling lighter than I had in months. Our first date was dinner at a Thai place in Midtown. Nothing fancy. It just felt easy. She asked questions and actually listened. She didn't need to be the center of attention or turn every conversation into something about fate or destiny. Isabella was grounded. She had her own life, her own friends, her own apartment across town. She didn't expect me to fill every gap or solve every problem. We started seeing each other regularly, twice a week at first, then more. By month 3, I realized I was genuinely happy. Happy in a way I hadn't been, even before Scarlett left. She never played games, never tested me, never made me guess what she was feeling. That simplicity felt revolutionary after years of Scarlett's emotional roller coasters. I stopped checking Scarlett's social media, stopped wondering if she was still with Julian, stopped replaying that morning in my head. For the first time since the breakup, I felt like I was truly moving forward, not just surviving. Isabella met Daniel, met my friends, and everyone said the same thing: she was good for me, stable, kind. Real. Daniel pulled me aside one night after a dinner with Isabella and said he hadn't seen me this relaxed in years, maybe ever. His comment hit me harder than I expected, because he was right. Around month 10, I started thinking about rings, about proposals, about actually building a future with someone who wanted to build it with me. And the idea didn't scare me the way I thought it would. I took Isabella to the Outer Banks for a long weekend. We stayed in a little bed and breakfast overlooking the water. On the last night, I asked her to marry me on the beach at sunset. She said yes, without hesitation, without drama. Just pure, unadulterated joy. We told our families, started planning an engagement party, picked a date for the wedding. I felt like I'd finally closed the chapter on Scarlett. Like she was just a painful memory that had ultimately led me somewhere so much better. In a weird way, I was even grateful. Without that pain, I never would have truly appreciated what real stability felt like. Never would have recognized how exhausting it had been to constantly manage someone else's emotions. A year after Scarlett walked out, I was engaged to someone who actually valued me, who didn't see love as a competition or a cosmic test. I thought that was the end of her role in my life. I was very, very wrong. The engagement party was supposed to be small, maybe 40 people at this event space in Midtown, with exposed beams and string lights. Nothing over the top, just family and close friends celebrating something that felt so right. Isabella's mom had helped with the planning. Daniel handled the music. Everything was going perfectly, until it wasn't. I was standing near the bar, talking to my cousin Marcus, when I saw her walk in. For a second, I thought I was hallucinating, like my brain had conjured her out of some lingering anxiety. Scarlett was wearing a cream-colored dress, the kind you'd wear to a garden party, or maybe someone else's wedding. She had this expression on her face like she belonged there, like she'd been invited and was just fashionably late. My stomach dropped so hard I thought I might actually throw up right there next to the appetizer table. Isabella was across the room talking to her sister and hadn't seen her yet. I felt this immediate panic about what was going to happen, how this would play out, whether I should intercept Scarlett before she got deeper into the space. I started walking toward her, but she moved fast, weaving through clusters of guests like she knew exactly where she was going. Before I could reach her, she grabbed a glass of champagne off a tray and positioned herself near the small stage we'd set up for toasts. Daniel saw her and looked at me with this "what the hell" expression, and I just shook my head. I didn't have words yet. Didn't have a plan. I was still trying to process that she'd actually crashed my engagement party. She didn't approach me directly. Didn't pull me aside for some private conversation. Instead, she just stood there, sipping champagne, watching. The worst part was how comfortable she looked, like she was observing something that involved her, something she had a stake in. A few guests recognized her. I could see the confused glances, the whispered questions, people trying to figure out why my ex-girlfriend was at my engagement party in a dress that screamed main character energy. Marcus walked over and quietly asked if I wanted him to handle it, meaning ask her to leave. But I told him to wait, hoping she'd just make her appearance and then leave on her own. Isabella finally noticed her. I saw the moment of recognition cross her face. She walked over to me, squeezed my hand, and quietly asked, "Is that Scarlett?" I nodded. She said, we should just ignore her and let her leave on her own. But Scarlett wasn't planning to leave quietly. About 20 minutes into the party, Daniel was supposed to give a toast. He'd gone up to the microphone and started talking about how happy he was for us. Then, suddenly, Scarlett was moving toward the stage. She didn't ask permission, didn't wait for an invitation. She just walked up and took the microphone right out of Daniel's hand while he stood there, too stunned to stop her. The room went silent. That awful kind of silence where everyone knows something bad is happening, but nobody knows how to intervene yet. Scarlett smiled at the crowd like she was about to deliver good news. She started talking about love, about second chances, about how sometimes we make mistakes that lead us back home. She said, true love doesn't give up. And sometimes the universe tests us to see if we're strong enough to fight for what matters. I realized, with growing horror, that she wasn't there to apologize or even just to cause a scene for attention. She was there to reclaim me, to publicly announce that I was supposed to be hers. Isabella's grip on my hand tightened. I could feel her shaking, not with fear, but with anger. I knew I had to do something before this got worse. I walked up to the stage and held out my hand for the microphone. Scarlett hesitated, looked at me with this hopeful expression, like maybe I was about to agree with her, about to validate whatever fantasy she'd constructed. I took the microphone and looked out at all these people who'd come to celebrate Isabella and me. People who had no idea what Scarlett had put me through. And in that moment, I felt a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I turned to Scarlett and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "You once told me that when you love someone, you should be happy for them and their soulmate." She flinched, like I'd slapped her. I continued, "Isabella is mine. Please be happy for me, and please leave my life." The room was completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Scarlett's face went through about 5 different emotions in 3 seconds: confusion, anger, humiliation, rage. She started yelling, calling me selfish, calling me cruel, saying I'd never understood her, that I'd never fought for her, that I was making the biggest mistake of my life. I just stood there, holding the microphone, while she spiraled. Finally, Isabella's dad signaled to someone, and 2 security guards started making their way toward the stage. That's when I recognized one of them, the taller guy with the buzz cut and the radio clipped to his belt. It was Julian. Apparently, he'd started moonlighting at private events after his plaza gig. The irony was so thick I almost laughed. Scarlett saw him at the same moment I did, and something in her snapped completely. She lunged at him, actually lunged, and started hitting his chest, screaming, "You were supposed to be different. You promised me forever." Julian looked mortified, trying to grab her wrists while staying professional. His partner jumped in to help restrain her. Scarlett was completely unhinged now, spitting, scratching, calling Julian a failure, calling me a coward, calling Isabella names I won't repeat. They managed to secure her arms and started walking her toward the exit while she thrashed and screamed. Every single person at that party just watched in stunned silence. I saw Julian's face as they passed me. Saw the exhaustion there, the regret. And I understood that whatever Scarlett had promised him about destiny and soulmates had fallen apart, just like it had with me. He caught my eye for just a second, and I saw something there that looked like an apology, like he finally understood what I'd been dealing with. The door closed behind them, and the room stayed quiet for another few seconds. Then Daniel grabbed the microphone. "Well," he said, "that was unexpected. Let's get back to celebrating these two." People laughed nervously, and conversation slowly started up again. Isabella pulled me aside into a hallway and asked if I was okay. I realized I was. I was actually okay because for the first time since Scarlett left, I'd chosen peace over saving her, chosen my future over her chaos. She hugged me tight and whispered that she was proud of me. I felt something break loose in my chest, some last piece of guilt I'd been carrying about not fighting harder when Scarlett left. We went back to the party and finished the night surrounded by people who actually loved us, who actually wanted us to be happy. When we got home that night, I held Isabella and felt grateful that I'd let Scarlett go, that I hadn't fought for something that was already destroying me. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from an unknown number and a voicemail from Scarlett crying about how I'd humiliated her, how I'd turned everyone against her, how I'd ruined her life. I deleted it without listening to the whole thing. I thought the worst was over. Thought that public humiliation would be enough to make her disappear for good. Thought we could finally move on without her shadow hanging over us. I didn't know she was just getting started. 2 weeks later, I got a call from a lawyer I didn't recognize, asking if I knew anything about a lawsuit. Scarlett had filed one against Julian, against the security company he worked for, claiming excessive force, emotional distress, physical assault, the whole 9 yards. She was asking for $2 million, positioning herself as a victim who'd been brutalized by aggressive security guards at a private event. My first reaction was disbelief, then panic. Even though I wasn't named in the suit, I knew this could spiral into something that touched Isabella and me, dragging our names through depositions and court documents and local news coverage. I called Isabella immediately. She could hear the stress in my voice and told me to breathe. Told me we'd handle it together. Told me Scarlett couldn't hurt us unless we let her. But I was scared, genuinely scared, because I'd seen what Scarlett could do when she felt wronged. How she could twist narratives, play the victim, and make people believe her version of events. The security company hired a defense team. Their lawyer contacted me, wanting a statement about what happened that night, about Scarlett's behavior leading up to the incident, about whether I'd seen her attack Julian first. I told them everything, gave them a written statement, walked them through the entire evening from the moment she walked in uninvited to the moment she lunged at Julian. They seemed confident they had a strong case. But I couldn't shake this feeling that Scarlett was going to find a way to win, to make everyone else pay for her bad decisions. The lawyer mentioned that several guests had also given statements corroborating my account, which should have made me feel better, but somehow made it worse, because now more people were getting dragged into Scarlett's chaos. The lawsuit moved forward. A preliminary hearing was scheduled for early fall, about 4 months after the engagement party. During that time, I barely slept. I kept imagining worst-case scenarios, Scarlett winning millions, the story going viral, our wedding getting postponed or cancelled because of the media attention, my job finding out and questioning my judgment. My boss actually pulled me aside one day and asked if everything was okay, because my performance had dropped. I had to explain the situation without sounding like I was involved in some Jerry Springer-level drama. Isabella, though, she just kept planning the wedding. Kept moving forward like Scarlett didn't exist. I tried to match her calm, but inside, I was falling apart. She'd pick out flowers, and I'd be thinking about court dates. She'd talk about the honeymoon, and I'd be refreshing news sites to see if the lawsuit had been covered. I started having nightmares about Scarlett showing up at the wedding. About her filing more lawsuits, about this never ending. The day of the hearing finally came. I sat in the courtroom gallery next to Isabella, watching Scarlett walk in. She wore a conservative dress and minimal makeup, playing the part of the wounded innocent. She had a lawyer who looked expensive, probably someone she'd convinced to take the case on contingency. He made his opening statement about how his client had been assaulted without provocation, how she'd suffered lasting psychological trauma, how the security company had failed in their duty to use appropriate force. Then the defense stood up and mentioned that body cam footage had been submitted as evidence. My heart rate spiked, because I hadn't known they had video. The lawyer asked to play it for the court, and suddenly, everyone in that room could see exactly what happened. Could see Scarlett lunging at Julian, spitting in his face, scratching at his arms while he tried to back away and maintain professional distance. You could hear her screaming on the audio, calling him a failure, calling him worthless. And then see both guards trying to restrain her as gently as possible while she thrashed and kicked. The footage ran for maybe 3 minutes, but it felt longer. When it ended, the judge looked at Scarlett's lawyer with an expression that said everything. Scarlett stood up before her lawyer could respond and started yelling that the video was edited, that it didn't show what happened before, that they were all protecting each other. The judge told her to sit down and be quiet, or he'd hold her in contempt. Her lawyer tried to salvage something, argued that even if she'd been aggressive, the guards had used excessive force, but the judge wasn't buying it. He dismissed the case entirely, said it was frivolous and a waste of the court's time. Then he did something I didn't expect. He ordered Scarlett to pay the security company's legal fees and issued a formal reprimand that would stay on her record. Scarlett lost it right there in the courtroom. Started screaming about injustice, about corruption, about how everyone was against her. The bailiff had to escort her out while she yelled threats at Julian, at the lawyers, at the judge. I sat there feeling this weird mix of relief and emptiness, like I'd been holding my breath for months and could finally exhale, but didn't know what to do with the air. The security company's lawyer told me afterward that they were considering filing a countersuit for defamation and abuse of process, and I said I'd cooperate however they needed. Scarlett's lawsuit didn't just get dismissed, it got recorded as a loss with penalties, which meant she now had legal fees she couldn't pay and a record that made her look unstable and litigious. About a month later, I heard through mutual acquaintances that she'd been fired from the daycare in Midtown. Apparently, the lawsuit and the public breakdown had made parents uncomfortable, and the administration decided she was a liability. One parent had apparently seen the engagement party meltdown video that someone had posted online, and that was enough to raise concerns about her judgment around children. Then, I heard she'd moved back in with her parents in Gastonia. That Julian had blocked her on everything and gotten a restraining order after she'd shown up at his apartment multiple times. That she was working as a cleaning person for an office building in Midtown. Part of me wanted to feel vindictive, wanted to celebrate her downfall. But mostly, I just felt tired, relieved that the chaos was finally over. Isabella and I got married that December in a small ceremony with tight security and a private guest list. No drama, no surprises. Just two people promising to build something stable together. The venue had strict instructions about Scarlett, with her photo provided to security. I hated that we had to take those precautions, but it was necessary. We bought a house in the suburbs, adopted a dog, started talking about kids. And I realized I'd completely stopped thinking about Scarlett, except as a cautionary tale I might tell someday. Last I heard, she was still working that cleaning job, still living with her parents, still posting cryptic things on social media about betrayal and karma. Daniel sent me a screenshot once of her posting something about fighting for love. I didn't even feel angry, just sad that she'd burned down her entire life chasing some fantasy about destiny and soulmates. Isabella got pregnant in early 2024, and we had our daughter this past January. Holding her in the hospital, I thought about how different my life would have been if Scarlett hadn't left. If I'd stayed in that relationship, if I'd eventually married her, I would have been miserable. Constantly managing her moods, constantly wondering when the next crisis would hit, constantly walking on eggshells around someone who saw everything as a test of loyalty. She said she just wanted to fight for love, wanted to follow her heart, wanted to be happy. But love doesn't look like destruction. Real love looks like Isabella falling asleep on the couch while feeding our daughter at 3 a.m. Looks like building something quiet and lasting. Looks like choosing someone every day without drama or cosmic signs. Scarlett taught me what I didn't want. And for that, I guess I should be grateful. but I still find myself wondering sometimes, how can someone confuse so much chaos with love?